Have you ever heard of a place where the dead refuse to stay buried? A place where the forest whispers secrets of long-lost souls in a game once played by children, now demands the ultimate price? What if I told you that there's a camp, abandoned for years, where the souls of its past inhabitants still roam, seeking the next player to fall into their trap? It sounds like the plot of a horror movie, right? But it's not. HollowPines Camp is real, and its cursed history is darker than any fiction. And for the three friends who returned there, what began as a simple trip down memory lane quickly turned into a battle for their lives. What happened to them? Who, or what, still lurks within the ruins of this once lively camp? Stay with me, because the chilling truth behind HollowPines will keep you up at night. It had been years, decades even, since Ethan, Lily, and Tyler had last set foot in HollowPines, a camp that had been an anchor in their childhood, a place filled with laughter, campfires, and late-night stories under the stars, the kind of place where summer felt eternal. But all that changed when the camp shut down. The notice came in the mail, a simple envelope that carried the news their younger selves would never understand. HollowPines is officially closed. For years, Ethan had thought about the place, wondering what happened to it. But life had carried him far from those woods. Yet, when Lily sent the message in their group chat, "Guys, we need to go back to HollowPines," for old time's sake, it felt right. Like they had to. Like something in the air was pushing them toward it. They packed up their bags, brushed off the dust of their old camping gear, and hit the road. The drive to HollowPines took longer than expected, winding roads, overgrown paths, and detours from construction and time's cruel touch. But when they finally arrived, Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. The camp looked exactly like it had in their memories, but in a hauntingly different way. The front gate was rusted and barely hanging on its hinges. The once proud wooden sign, HollowPines Camp, was now just a ghost of what it used to be. Its green paint faded, and pieces of it cracked and missing. "Is this it?" Lily asked, as she stepped out of the car. Her voice was laced with unease, her eyes scanning the abandoned campgrounds. "It feels wrong." Tyler, ever the optimist, grinned. "It's just the same as we left it. A little run down, sure, but it still holds the memories." But Ethan wasn't so sure. There was something unsettling in the air, like the trees themselves were watching them. The once vibrant camp was now a husk, barely standing but still holding onto fragments of the past. And as they walked past the overgrown trail, Ethan noticed something odd. The ground seemed to shift under their feet. The once pristine dirt road was now cracked, uneven, as if it hadn't been walked on in years. They headed towards their old cabin, but the closer they got, the more the unease grew. The windows were shattered, the roof sagging, and what was once a welcoming space now felt cold, abandoned. There was no sign of life, no animals scurrying, no birds in the trees. It was eerily quiet. Ethan's eyes landed on a small, weathered object partially buried in the dirt near the cabin's entrance. He knelt down, brushing away the dirt to reveal an old camp bracelet, one that he remembered wearing as a kid. The familiar logo of the camp stared back at him. But something was wrong. It was stained with dark, dried blood. His heart skipped a beat. Was this a sign of something that had happened here after they left? Or was it something older? Something that had been left behind, waiting to be found again? Lily caught sight of it too, her face pale. "That wasn't here before. Do you think someone else?" Tyler's voice cut through the tension. "It's just an old bracelet. Someone probably left it behind." But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a forgotten relic. His mind wandered back to the stories they'd all heard when they were kids, whispers about strange disappearances, about campers who never returned from the woods. As they set up their tents by the fire pit, Ethan couldn't help but feel the weight of the place pressing down on them. The trees around them were thick and heavy, as though they were closing in, and the air was thick with something unexplainable. Before long, the trio found themselves around the fire, reminiscing about their time here. They talked about their pranks, the midnight swims, the old counselor who used to tell them ghost stories. But even as they laughed, there was a nagging feeling in the back of Ethan's mind. Was it just nostalgia? Or was there something more, something dark, lingering in the very soil of this forgotten place? Then, as the wind picked up, a sound carried through the trees, a whistle. Soft at first, then clearer. like a distant tune that seemed all too familiar. It wasn't any bird or animal they knew. It was human, but who could it be? Ethan froze, his hand gripping the side of his chair. Did you guys hear that? Tyler looked around. Probably just the wind. Lily, however, looked uneasy. That's not the wind. It's like a whistle. Like the one from the old game we used to play here. The whistle came again, cutting through the air, sending a chill through Ethan's spine. This wasn't a game anymore. And just like that, the past they had returned to, their memories, their laughter, began to shift. What they thought was just a trip down memory lane had become something far more sinister. Let's get some rest, Ethan said, trying to shake the unease creeping up on him. We'll figure this out tomorrow. But deep down, he knew, tomorrow might never come, not in the way they expected. Stay with me, because the real horror begins when they start to understand that HollowPines isn't just a camp. It's something alive, something that will never let them leave. It was around midnight when it first happened. The whistle. Ethan, still trying to shake off the unease from earlier, was the first to hear it. It wasn't loud at first, more like a faint echo. Something that might have been carried by the wind, if not for how deliberate it sounded. It was a pattern, rhythmic, almost as if someone was calling them. Do you guys hear that? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily froze, her eyes darting to the trees. What the hell is that? Tyler shrugged, trying to remain casual. Probably just an animal, some bird or something. But deep down, Ethan knew it wasn't an animal. It wasn't the wind, either. It was something intentional. And then, it came again, louder this time, unmistakable, a clear, eerie whistle that seemed to slice through the stillness of the night air. Ethan's heart began to race. The sound, it was too familiar. He felt a shiver run up his spine. A memory he couldn't place, but one that gnawed at him, hidden in the recesses of his mind. I swear that's the same tune we used to hear at camp, remember? Ethan said, voice trembling now. Lily looked at him, wide-eyed. You don't think it's the game? The game. The memories started flooding back, years ago. When they were kids, they used to play a game called Statue and Song in the dark. Around the fire, one person would stand at the end of the field, back turned, humming a haunting melody. The rest of the campers would try to move towards them without being caught. If you were caught moving, you were out. But that was a game. A children's game. This felt different. Another whistle echoed through the trees. But this time it was louder. More urgent, pulling at the fabric of the night itself. And then the strangest thing happened. The fire flickered. The flames danced unnaturally, casting long shadows that stretched out toward them as though reaching for something. The smell of smoke filled the air. But it wasn't comforting, it was suffocating. Ethan felt his breath catch in his throat. Lily stood up, her voice shaking. We should get inside the tents. Now. But it was too late. Something wasn't right, and Ethan knew they couldn't escape it by running. Not this time. He glanced back at the dark woods surrounding them. And that's when he saw it. A figure. Just for a moment. Lurking at the edge of the trees. It was tall. Almost too tall. With limbs that seemed too long and a posture that was off. Ethan blinked, and the figure was gone. Did you see that? He asked. His voice barely audible. Lily and Tyler both turned to look at him. See what? Tyler asked, his tone trying to mask his growing unease. I saw someone, or something, standing in the trees, Ethan said, but even as the words left his mouth, he doubted them. Maybe it was just the shadows playing tricks on him. But Lily didn't look convinced. Let's just stay close. I'm not feeling good about this. Ethan nodded, but as he did, the whistling came again, this time louder, almost mocking them. It echoed around them, wrapping itself in the very air they breathed, as if it was coming from everywhere at once. And then, as if on cue, the wind died. Silence. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was thick, pressing in on them, and that's when the ground beneath them seemed to shift. The game had already begun. Move, now, Lily shouted, panic rising in her voice. Without thinking, Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the fire pit. They all crouched down, the heat from the fire doing little to quell the cold creeping through their bones. Ethan's breath was ragged now as he glanced around. The air felt heavier, like the very trees were watching them, waiting. There was a palpable tension, a feeling that they were no longer in control. No longer just three friends camping. They had unwittingly crossed a line. And now, the camp, HollowPines, had taken them into its twisted game. Okay, Tyler stammered. Let's just stay calm. This is just some kind of prank, right? Some guy messing with us. But the whistle sounded again, louder this time, and something shifted in the air. Ethan could feel it. Something was different. The ground trembled ever so slightly. And then, the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps, not coming from them. A figure emerged from the shadows of the trees. This time, Ethan didn't question what he was seeing. It was real. It was tall, unnaturally tall, dressed in what looked like an old, tattered camp counselor uniform. Its face was hidden beneath a shadowed hood, but its presence was undeniable. "Who are you?" Ethan called out, though his voice cracked. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it tilted its head, slowly, like it was studying them. The whistling stopped abruptly. For a moment, the only sound was their own breathing, shallow and fast. And then, as if the figure had made a decision, it raised one long, spindly arm and pointed directly at Ethan. "Move," the figure whispered, and the air around them seemed to freeze. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. A heartbeat passed, then another, and before they could even react, the whistle began again, this time louder, sharper, a signal to start running. The game had begun, and there was no going back. Keep watching, because this is just the beginning. Whatever happened to the kids who played here before? Whatever is haunting HollowPines? It wants to play again, and this time, the stakes are life and death. In this section, we build on the eerie atmosphere and introduce the supernatural elements through the mysterious whistle and the ominous figure. The transition from curiosity to genuine terror is seamless, drawing the audience deeper into the unfolding horror. The unsettling tension sets the stage for the next chilling part of the story. As the sun dipped below the horizon, HollowPines grew quieter. The wind that had howled through the trees earlier seemed to hold its breath. But there was no peace. The silence felt like a trap, waiting for something to break it. And then, it happened again, the whistle. It was no longer faint. It was loud, unmistakable, and it was coming from all around them. Ethan's pulse quickened. Lily clutched his arm, her grip tight, as if she were trying to anchor herself in a world that was slowly slipping into madness. Tyler stood frozen, staring at the trees, his face pale, his mouth slightly open in disbelief. "Why is it doing this?" Tyler whispered, his voice shaking. Ethan didn't have an answer. How could he? This wasn't just a prank or some leftover memories of childhood games. This was real, something far older, far darker than any of them had ever imagined. As they huddled together, their eyes scanning the shadowed woods around them, Ethan caught sight of something that made his stomach drop, a shape moving between the trees. It wasn't human. It wasn't even something he could put into words. It was more like a silhouette, shifting and flickering like a half-formed ghost. Too vague to fully grasp, but impossible to ignore. "Did you see that?" Lily gasped, her voice barely audible. Before anyone could respond, another figure appeared, this one emerging from the darkness near the campfire. It was tall, almost skeletal, with glowing eyes that burned through the night. Ethan could barely make out its features. But what struck him was the face, pale, gaunt, its mouth frozen in a silent scream. It was a face that should have been long gone, lost to time, to decay. "Who? What are you?" Ethan managed to ask, his voice hoarse. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it moved closer, stepping into the flickering light of the campfire. Its form solidified, revealing a tattered counselor's uniform, the same kind they used to wear when they were kids. But this was no living person. Ethan could feel it in the air, the heaviness pressing down on his chest, the coldness that wasn't from the night, but from something else entirely. Lily shuddered, stepping back. "Is that one of the counselors from before?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan didn't know. He didn't care. He just knew they had to get out of there. But before he could say anything, the figure slowly raised its arm and pointed toward the woods. And then, from the darkness, another figure emerged, and another, more of them, pale, disfigured, all wearing old, torn camp uniforms, their faces twisted in expressions of agony. They circled around the fire, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they were part of a ritual. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. "This can't be real," Tyler muttered, his voice barely audible. These are dead people." Ethan nodded, feeling a cold sweat form on his brow. The air had grown thick, suffocating. These were no ordinary spirits. They were lost souls, trapped in the endless cycle of the game. Unable to escape, forever bound to HollowPines. He felt the truth crash into him. The camp wasn't just abandoned, it had been abandoned for a reason. People had gone missing here, gone without a trace. No bodies, no answers. The stories about HollowPines weren't just rumors. They were warnings. Lily spoke, her voice breaking through the tension. I don't understand. Why are they still here? Why can't they move on? Ethan's eyes locked onto one of the figures, a woman. Her face obscured by a dark hood. She was standing a little apart from the others. Her head tilted, watching them with those hollow, dark eyes. Her gaze felt like it was piercing straight through him, as if she could see into the deepest corners of his soul. And then, she did something that made his blood run cold. She whispered something. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but the air around him seemed to tremble as she spoke. And suddenly, he felt it, a presence, an overwhelming weight that pressed down on him, as if the very earth beneath his feet had come alive, threatening to swallow him whole. The whistle sounded again, this time louder than before. The notes vibrating in the air, thick with malice. It was no longer a melody, it was a call, a summons. Ethan could feel the game drawing them in. The lost souls of HollowPines were trapped here, just as they had been for years, forced to repeat their roles in this endless cycle. And now, they wanted new players. They wanted them. Stay back, Ethan whispered, pulling Lily and Tyler toward the fire. But even as he spoke, he knew it was useless. The spirits weren't there to hurt them. Not directly. They weren't the ones that would kill them. The game would do that. As if on cue, the figure in the hood took a step forward. The others followed suit, moving in unison. The ground beneath Ethan's feet shook again, and the fire flickered violently. This wasn't just a camp. This wasn't just some ghost story. It was a trap, and they had just walked right into it. Stay with me, because this story doesn't end with a simple escape. HollowPines has one rule: if you play, you don't leave. And now that they've been pulled into the game, Ethan and his friends must face the cost of breaking free, if it's even possible. The night felt like it was suffocating them. Ethan, Lily, and Tyler had no choice now. The spirits, the lost souls, had surrounded them, their hollow eyes fixed on their every move. And that whistle, the damned whistle, it continued to echo through the trees like an insistent warning. It wasn't a call for help. It was a call for them to play. They had no idea what kind of game they were about to enter. But there was one thing they were sure of: the game wasn't winnable. Not in the way they'd thought. At least, there was no simple victory here. There were no winners, just the lucky few who managed to survive the longest. Run, Ethan shouted, his voice cracking as he grabbed Lily's arm and yanked her away from the fire. Tyler, who had been frozen in place, snapped out of his trance and followed quickly. The sound of their feet crunching against the dry leaves the only thing filling the thick, oppressive silence. But it didn't feel like they were running from the spirits. They weren't running from the figures in the shadows. No, they were running from something far worse, the game. They darted into the woods, their breaths ragged and panicked, as the wind picked up, sending branches crashing down above them. The trees seemed to close in tighter, as if the forest itself was trying to trap them, forcing them deeper into the darkness. And all the while, the whistle kept coming, closer, louder. The air around them had a heaviness to it, like something ancient was stirring. Just beyond their reach, a low hum, almost imperceptible at first, joined the whistle, a sound that seemed to vibrate in Ethan's bones, making his skin crawl. Do you hear that? Lily gasped, her face pale as she glanced over her shoulder. I hear it, Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper. It's not the wind. Lily, it's them. They're playing the game. Tyler, who had been trailing behind, suddenly stumbled, his foot catching on a root. He cried out, falling to the ground with a loud thud. Tyler, Lily shouted, reaching out for him. Keep going, Ethan yelled, pulling her away, desperation clawing at his throat. If we stop, we're dead. But Lily wasn't so sure. Tyler had fallen too hard. His body was still now. And there was something wrong, he wasn't moving. Ethan felt the weight of that. The terrible realization that they were being hunted. And not by the spirits, but by something far more relentless, far more unforgiving. We had to go back for him. Lily screamed, tearing at Ethan's arm, but he shook his head violently. No, Ethan snapped. We can't go back. If we do, we'll be trapped too. We have to keep moving. We can't let the game catch us. Lily's eyes welled with tears. But she didn't argue. They ran. The forest grew darker still, the shadows closing in tighter around them. Every step they took seemed to lead them deeper into the maze of twisted trees and underbrush. And then, just when Ethan thought they might break free, he heard something, faint at first. Then louder, footsteps. Something, was chasing them. They weren't alone anymore. The air seemed to shift, turning colder, thicker with a strange pressure. They could hear it, feel it, closing in around them like a tightening noose. Faster, Ethan shouted, but his voice broke. It was no longer just fear, it was survival. And it was slipping away. They could feel the presence behind them. The whistle had stopped. The sound of those footsteps was now the only thing that mattered. Lily, gasping for breath, glanced over her shoulder. Her eyes widened in terror. Ethan, I saw it. Her voice cracked. It's right behind us. Ethan's heart slammed in his chest. He didn't need to look. He could feel it. The figure was there. He didn't know how or why, but he could feel the presence of whatever hunted them. Don't look back, just run, Ethan shouted, his voice filled with raw panic. They were no longer just running from the spirits. This wasn't just some trick of the mind, some fleeting, ethereal presence. No, this was a chase, a game. And the rules were clear. If they stopped, they lost. If they let up, they would be taken. They ran until their legs burned, until their lungs ached with every breath. The sound of the footsteps grew louder, closer, like the pounding of an invisible heart just behind them. There was no escape. The forest had become a trap, and they were the prey. Then, as the trees began to thin, as a clearing appeared ahead, Ethan thought he saw a glimpse of freedom. He pushed forward, but as he did, his foot caught on something in the ground, something solid. The ground beneath him seemed to shift, and before he could react, he was falling. He hit the earth hard, pain shooting through his body as he struggled to rise, only to find himself staring into the face of a dark, twisted figure, a counselor's uniform, torn and ragged, a face that was barely human, its eyes wide and unblinking. It towered over him, its mouth stretched in a grin that made Ethan's stomach churn. No, Ethan screamed, scrambling backward, but the figure stepped forward, blocking his escape. The whistle came again, and in that moment, Ethan knew there was no way out. This was the game, and there were only two possible outcomes: you played, or you didn't. And the game always won. Stay with me, because the game is only beginning. And in HollowPines, there's no such thing as a safe zone. Every corner, every turn, leads deeper into the dark, and not everyone will make it out alive. It was clear now, the game wasn't just some twisted, supernatural prank, it was a curse. HollowPines wasn't abandoned by accident. It was a place where souls were trapped, where the lost wandered forever, bound to the land by a malevolent force that thrived on the fear and suffering of its players. Ethan, gasping for breath, stared at the figure towering over him. His heart pounded so loudly in his chest that it felt like the sound would drown out everything else. The cursed entity, one of the many lost souls of the camp, loomed like a dark shadow. Its hollow eyes locked onto Ethan's, and he could feel its gaze stripping away his last shreds of hope. He could barely breathe under the weight of its stare. Lily and Tyler were still behind him, their faces white with terror. Ethan could see the hopelessness in their eyes. They had tried to run, tried to fight, but now, they were standing at the mercy of the very thing they'd come to destroy. And they couldn't stop it. But Ethan, despite the fear coursing through his veins, realized something. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to break the curse, to stop the game. The spirits, the figures, they were all bound here. And that meant there was a key. If they could find it, they could free themselves, and maybe, just maybe, break the cycle for good. The wind howled around them, whipping through the trees as if urging them forward. The whistle sounded again, closer, sharper. Ethan's head spun with the knowledge that time was running out. They had to act, or they would become just like the others, the lost souls of HollowPines. Think, Ethan muttered under his breath, his mind racing. His eyes darted to the trees surrounding them, scanning for anything that could help, any clue. That's when he saw it, the faint outline of an old, weathered symbol etched into the bark of a nearby oak tree. It was nearly hidden, but there was no mistaking it. A triangle, the symbol of the game. The game was more than just a game, it was a ritual. A curse, Ethan thought. The game was played to bind the souls to the land, to trap them here. But every curse had a loophole. Didn't it? Lily, Ethan said, his voice urgent. Look at the tree. The symbol. It's the key. Lily turned, her eyes wide with confusion. But when she saw it, she gasped. I remember now. We used to see this in the old camp stories. It's the symbol the counselors used to warn us about. Ethan nodded, understanding dawning on him. It's not just a symbol. It's a seal. The game's ritual is tied to it. And if we break the seal, we break the curse. Tyler, who had been silent for too long, spoke up, his voice a mixture of disbelief and desperation. How do we break it? There's no way we can just erase a curse like this. But Ethan knew, sometimes, breaking a curse didn't require magic. It just required the right action at the right time. Touch it, all three of us. Together, Ethan said, his hands shaking. We have to finish what the game started. We have to play, but this time, we play by our own rules. Lily hesitated, then stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch the symbol. Tyler followed, reluctant but determined. Ethan stood in front of them, looking at the symbol one last time before joining them. Together, they placed their hands on the tree. The moment they made contact, a wave of energy surged through the air. The ground beneath them trembled, and the trees groaned like they were being uprooted. The sky seemed to crack open, as if the very fabric of reality was bending around them. The whistle stopped, the spirits fell silent. Then, in an instant, it all went quiet. The pressure, the weight of the curse, they were gone. Ethan pulled his hand away from the tree, his heart racing. The air felt lighter now, less oppressive. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees felt like a symphony compared to the suffocating silence that had haunted them for so long. We did it, Lily whispered, her voice still filled with awe and disbelief. Ethan looked around. The figures, those lost souls, had vanished, their forms dissolving into the air, leaving nothing but the soft echo of their presence behind. But even as they stood there, finally free, Ethan felt a strange sadness creep into his chest. The curse was broken, yes, but the memories, the darkness, it would never truly leave them. HollowPines would remain a scar in their minds, a place they could never truly forget. I thought we were done, Tyler said, still catching his breath, but I don't think any of us will ever be the same again. Ethan nodded. No, we'll never forget, but at least we're free. But even as the words left his mouth, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the forest around them was different. Still watching, HollowPines might be freed from the curse, but the forest itself, the game, might never fully let them go. Stay with me, because the real test begins now. The curse is broken, but HollowPines isn't finished with them yet. The price of survival may still come with a heavy toll. In this section, we see the culmination of the trio's struggle to break the curse, incorporating both real and supernatural elements. The action is swift and intense, focusing on the idea that breaking a curse isn't always about defeating something external, but understanding the right steps to free oneself. The transition to the next phase of the story hints that while the curse may have been lifted, the true cost is still to be paid. The narrative ends with a lingering sense of unease, leaving the audience wondering what's next. The first light of dawn barely touched HollowPines when Ethan finally sank to the ground. Exhausted, every muscle in his body trembling. The fire had long since died, leaving only smoldering embers that cast faint, flickering shadows across the ruins of the camp. He sat there, staring at the trees, half expecting to see the dark figures emerge again, but there was nothing. Just silence. For a moment, Ethan thought he was free. Really free. But the camp had left its mark on him, deeper than he could have imagined. The trees, the overgrown trails, the decayed cabins, they weren't just structures anymore. They were reminders. Every branch, every broken window seemed to whisper the names of the lost souls they had encountered. Lily and Tyler were gone, vanished into the woods during the game, pulled into the curse in ways Ethan couldn't begin to explain. Their absence was palpable, a hollow ache in his chest. He stumbled to the old cabin one last time, brushing off the dirt and debris. In the corner, a small, cracked journal lay partially buried, Flipping through it, Ethan found entries from decades ago, campers describing strange whispers, shadows that moved on their own, disappearances that the counselors never explained. Some were marked with symbols he now recognized from the tree, the same symbols that had saved them, that had allowed them to break the curse. The evidence was everywhere. If only someone had been willing to see it. HollowPines wasn't just a story, it was history. A living reminder of what fear and the unknown could do. Ethan walked through the clearing, his steps slow, almost reluctant. Every snap of a twig underfoot made him flinch. And yet, for all the terror, there was a strange sense of awe. He had faced something beyond comprehension, survived it, and, somehow, broken it. He had survived HollowPines, even if the memories of it would haunt him forever. But as he reached the edge of the camp, Ethan paused. The wind rustled the trees, carrying a faint, almost imperceptible whistle. He froze, heart hammering. It was quieter than before, distant but unmistakable. A shiver ran down his spine. Had the curse truly been broken? Or had he only survived a single round? While the forest waited for the next player to stumble in, Ethan shook his head, trying to focus. No, he whispered to himself. I'm done. I survived. That's enough. And yet, as he turned to leave, he couldn't help but glance back one last time. The camp seemed empty, quiet, peaceful, but in the corners of his vision, he thought he saw a flicker of movement, a shadow, darting between the trees, vanishing before he could identify it. HollowPines had changed him. He would never forget it, and he would never truly leave it behind. For the viewers at home, Ethan's story serves as a chilling reminder. Some places hold more than memories. They hold echoes, they hold secrets, and sometimes, curiosity can be as dangerous as it is irresistible. If you enjoyed this story, stay tuned and don't miss what comes next, because HollowPines isn't the only place where games from the past can reach into the present. Share your thoughts below. What would you do if you stumbled upon a place like this? And remember, some games should never be played.